I noticed that the people who disagree with me on this are basically just saying that what I say sounds reactionary. Nothing, I know that like thinking is difficult, but nothing that I'm saying right now is a reactionary argument because I'm not making any prescriptive statements. Everything that I've said is descriptive. It is a fact that a lot of what people call genders are just identities that could not go by gender. They chose to call it a gender because that assigns it more social worth in online left-leaning spaces. These aren't prescriptive statements. This is true. And there are other things that are identities that we don't assign that level of importance. Now, personally, I think the reason why transphobia is such a big deal is because there are so many expectations around what it means to be a man and a woman, and because those clash so hard against people's internal identities sometimes, whether that be physiologically, in which case they're transsexual and they want like, the medical treatment and based, or whether it's only psychological and social, in which case it's still a huge deal because there's like a lot of weight to this. Guys, how much social weight is there to any of the innumerable genders you can find on GenderWiki? I'm going to go somewhere between 0 and none. So we're not talking about things that have this massive social, like huge presence behind them. We're creating new identities. And you can cancel me for this if you want, but a lot of people who choose xenogenders and xenopronouns just choose it because they like how they sound. Not because there's some massive, like, set of expected values surrounding them, but because they sound cool. And again, fucking based. I don't have anything against that. Change your name, change your identity. I don't care. But that's nicknames. We're talking about nicknames. Nicknames we're assigning the weight of gender to. And I just feel a little bit off about extrapolating the immediate and non-personally constructed weight of trans issues and equivocating that with people literally making a gender by creating a new one, by typing it and putting it in GenderWiki, and then saying they're that, and then saying people are transphobes for not respecting it. That feels odd to me. And it feels like if somebody wanted to be a shit, they could do that with any identity they have. I'm not an alpha male, I'm alpha gendered. If you disrespect me on that, you're being a transphobe. And imagine, and by the way, call me a fucking prophet, because will this not happen in the next 12 months? Will it not? Somebody's going to be like, oh, you make fun of alpha males? I'm alpha gender. What, do you have a problem with that? I identify as an alpha, a person who has a set of characteristics like being, aggressive and domineering. What are you going to say to that? Do you have a serious counter argument? The slippery slope? That's not a slippery slope. Slippery slopes mean that you're extrapolating worse conclusions. You're going down the line. This isn't a slippery slope. It's the same thing as what is currently happening. It's not a slope. It's a plateau, and we're on it. We're not dropping any elevation. It's the same thing. You take an idea that you like and you make it a gender. Yeah, this is a pull psyop waiting to happen. I think the difference there is that that person would clearly be being insincere. Wait, what difference does that make? Since when have leftists cared about the perceived sincerity with which people identify as a gender? Do you do that with trans women? Do you go, oh, I think it's a phase for them? No, you don't. You're operating off intuition for now. You just think the alpha gender thing feels silly, but in reality, your ideology has holes all over it. Not every identity has to be a gender. Wasn't super straight that? I don't share your perception. I think that the validity of identities should be weighed on a utilitarian basis, and super straight is transphobic. That's my argument against it. But if you want to adopt a holistic all identities are valid perspective, I'm sorry guys, super straight is valid. That's as valid of a sexuality as being homosexual or pansexual. If that's the perspective you're taking, then you have to accept that. It's deductively a product of the premises that have been laid out. No, I do not. Yes, you do. I'm sorry. I see you, by the way, in chat, Jesse of TGT. I know you're mad about this, but I'm afraid so, yeah.
Hey, everyone. So, normally I would come to you all bubbly. You know, I'm a very chipper person. So, Here's the thing. I guess I'll explain where I'm coming from on this one, and I want to make sure that this is understood. I'm not talking about this to call anyone out. I'm not talking about this because I want to put anyone on blast or cancel anyone. You know me. I just don't give a shit about that stuff. I feel really hurt. As you guys know, I have advocated for certain content creators, people that despite a lot of their behaviors and activities and, you know, their stuff, there has been a tendency to, at least to some degree, try to understand where they're coming from, even if there is a problem. This hair tuft is killing me. There we go. Stay. So last night, Hans of Akir had a panel with many other cool people discussing gender, different aspects of gender. And the third segment of that panel, or discussion topic, was neopronouns. As you know, I'm a fan of Vosh. I like Vosh's work. I think he can be spicy. I think he says things that are dumb occasionally, because for various reasons, but I think overall he's a nit good. Cancel me over that if you want. That's my take. And this isn't going to change my viewership. This isn't going to change whether or not I like that work. It just means that I feel hurt. Okay? So last night, during that neopronoun segment, there was a pretty good discussion. It was a very wholesome discussion. I highly recommend seeing either Vosh's VOD on it, or if Hans of Akir has one. It was just
a really good one.
Yeah, it was. We listened all the way through it. We were really impressed. I highly recommend you go watch that. That is not what we're going to be covering today. What I want to talk about is specifically afterwards. So after a panel or a debate, a lot of times streamers will do a time of reflection. And this is where things get problematic, because during that reflection period, Vosh got into an argument with his chat, and I got called out 3 separate times as Jess of TGT. Not to mention being harassed by another trans woman in the in VGG's chat. Not gonna make a big deal of them, but I will say that, again, noticing the pattern of seeing someone regularly sort of talk shit to 2 trans women isn't erased by the fact of this person also being a trans woman. All it means is internalized trans misogyny is a bitch. And the person still looked real bad. Because apparently my takes were awful. And here's what my arguments were. And I'll be making these through the video, but I'll just kind of spell them out for you. Gender is play. Any other framing of gender immediately becomes an issue of some level of gatekeeping. Now, my argument is that identities that are sexualities or gender, such as super straight, for example, are by their nature stupid as fuck, because they are made in bad faith. Super straight does not meet my intuitive criteria by what I would say is an actual group, because it's built inherently on trans misogyny. Right? We can say the same thing about certain other genders. We can say that there are probably a lot of Mogai genders, right? The star genders, flux gender, all these other things that probably aren't going to sneak around. They're probably not going to be like the most important thing, but they are metaphors and they are ways of describing internal experiences of gender that exist outside of the gender binary spectrum. Still with me? It is my belief, and it seems to be the belief of every clinician who actually knows what they're on about, that internal gender experience does not seem to be limited to the spectrum of masculine and feminine, or some there middle in or none. It seems to take on many, many forms, and some people use very creative language to describe that. I don't call myself a fae. I joke about it often, and I'm an evil queen. But the fact of the matter is that what it really comes down to is, and this is the thing I really need people to understand, is when I use fae fair pronouns, I'm pointing at something. I'm pointing at an aspect of my gender that I'm trying to get words around. So I, as I've explained in a previous video, look for that in the videos, I am trying to describe, I am trying to discuss what that is, using metaphors and stories and narrative that I am familiar with. Okay? Cool. That is not to say that someone's gender is actually a bunny or a fae or a deer. What is to say is that as human beings, we are using our experiences of the natural world or our internal experience or the narratives of old or whatever the fuck you're pulling from to sort of describe an external or describe an internal experience, right? Yeah, sometimes language doesn't have the right word about the thing you're talking about, so you have to mutate something and bring it over.
Yeah, and queer folks, especially young ones, have been playing with this idea for a long time. Sometimes those words stick and sometimes they don't, but it's important to understand that, like, for that period and for that time that is, accurate for that person or that description is working for them, that's still important. That's their internal, that's them trying to describe, like, the internal experience.
And this is the thing is so the major argument was about neopronouns was that this was in regards to the concept of gender abolition, which is the idea that we get rid of gender in all of its forms because it's bad. Now, there are a lot of trans people that are uncomfortable with that because gender abolition as a notion originally comes from TERFs. And the fact is that while that is a thing, and that is absolutely true, the simple fact of the matter is that if we are to just get rid of it, I think that does more harm than good. I think gender liberation, as Lumia in the discussion described it, is a much better system.
Yeah, I definitely felt sold on the gender liberation take as well during that discussion.
Oh, Jason Ballar, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And no, I agree. I think that there will be a point where things are going to start evening out. Here's my point. I believe that this stuff is important, and I don't like the direction that Vosh came at it from. The major issue here, and this is the thing I'm trying to make people clear about, is I'm not trying to cancel anyone. I'm not trying to I just feel hurt about this because due to the combination of lag and honestly, I think just being angry and upset, I feel like I was taken out of context, and I think my actual arguments and my credentialing that backs those arguments were sort of just ignored. So let's talk about this, because I want to go through this little section of Vosh's stream and discuss this, because this really bothers me. So we're going to be pausing occasionally to give ideas. Oh, JKRSSLR, I appreciate that. I was really struggling with it, so he wasn't listening to anyone. Well, other than the people that were sycophantically agreeing. You know, it is what it is. So, let's take a look. So, the story is Vosh just returned from the bathroom, and that's the situation we're in. The reason why, by the way, that we are expanding this window is because I need everybody to be able to see this. If you can notice in there, you'll see some of my posts, and you'll notice the timing of when they came up. They're a little off, so let's see what happens. So Vosh has just come back from the bathroom. He's going over this, and he's going to do donos, a bunch of other stuff. I'm going to let it run for a minute till we hit something that I have an issue with. So let's hear it out. Why don't I hear him? Hold on. Did I fuck something up?
Ooh, that went too far
shit.
back.
Shit. 1 second. By the way, this was a really good stream. Let me be very clear about that.
No, there was so much good stuff in this. If you didn't get a chance to watch it, I highly suggest it.
Oh, it's because I had it muted like an idiot. There we go.
Well, you know.
Get to watch Vosh sit down again. My apologies.
It really is. It really is a testament to the ferocity of his death roll that all these scratches ended up being fucking omnidirectional.
This is about his cat, by the way.
And long, you know? Yeah, thank you, Hans. I had a lot of fun coming on. Thank you. The more you mention, the more concerned I get. I talked about this earlier on stream. Did you know Pigeon's been down there the whole time? She's right out of frame.
I don't know why Jason had this to be the thing, but
bearded dragon are staring at each other.
What?
So at the bottom of every Vosh stream, there's a guy named Jason that goes through and does all the timestamps, and I don't know why this one is coded as neopronouns and gender when it's just Vosh talking about how his cat physically assaulted him.
Right there. Just staring. Been doing it for hours.
Okay, well.
Think I see her? No, you see a pink shirt right there. Lizard is here. You can see that. You can see Lizard.
Vosh, get to the point.
And Pigeon would be right around here.
What? Oh, he's really loud on our ears.
Shrink it. I need to do something real quick.
Do they want to eat each other? Yes, they do. Yes.
And not in the fun way.
For sure they do. 100%, yeah. Anyway, reflections on the panel. That was a good time. I had a lot of fun. Hope you guys understand the point that I was trying to make. Right now, kids being cringy, 14-year-olds being cringy on Tumblr, not exactly a big deal. But you gotta think about the worst case scenarios, okay? You gotta think about them getting a little older, getting a little more money. You got to think about corporations pandering, you know? I want gender abolished, not expanded. What if you got like, yeah, the Zay Zim Happy Meal from McDonald's or whatever?
So already, I think this is realm of absurdity arguments, right? So here's why. First and foremost, this immediately gets into everybody who uses neopronouns is a 14-year-old TikToker or Tumblr blogger. This is an incredibly bad faith statement. I use neopronouns. Now, Vosh will reiterate many times in here that he thinks it's very, very important to be respectful towards people, but I don't just want respect, I want converts. Right? So let's keep going, but understand this whole notion of like the Z-Zer Happy Meal, none of this matters. These worst case scenarios are absurdity. They're ad absurdums. They don't matter. Do you have anything you want to add?
I would note that Z0 is probably one of the ones in the running for like what was going to win out to be kind of the most universal pronouns. I noticed as I was going to conferences around the country and kind of working with different organizations, it was kind of coming down to they, them, and Z0 or ZZM some format. So just so you guys know, like depending on what part of the country you're in, some of these may be more or less in use just because of geographic location and what the people in that area kind of gravitate towards. That's all. Yeah. That's just something I noticed from my time doing activism.
I just think there are ways to invent offense, and I just wonder if that's a direction we might be heading in. You guys know that, right? It's possible to invent offense. You know what I mean? Like, all of this is arbitrary. Gender is arbitrary, blah, blah. But when a trans guy says, call me he, him, and you don't, and they get offended, that's not inventing offense. Because the hurt there is part of this massive and, like, ancient set of constructs that have been influencing him from, like, birth to now. So it's nothing he invented, But, guys, I'm going to keep it.
But here's the thing, and this is where I would argue against this, is that gender by its nature, as Vosh just said, is arbitrary. And so what he's basically, for those who aren't really getting it, let me see if I can separate it out. If you misgender a trans man or a trans woman like myself, these are based on very real ancient constructs that are there in such a way as to be sort of almost understood in the situation. So if you misgender a trans man, you know what a man is. This person identifies as a man. That person isn't like just creating being offended. What they're doing is they're offended because they're not getting it. Or they're offended or not getting it, excuse me, I brain farted. They're offended because their identity is not being acknowledged.
I think Dr. Z kind of uses, she's another YouTuber that is pretty fantastic, and some of the language that she uses is like, your internal gender schema, and this is something that's been kind of like building up and it's been something like in process since you were, basically born. And that's a very like internal, intense, process that happens.
Yeah, and it does feel like an appeal to tradition. I would agree with that, Ira Bones. But let's continue, folks.
100% billion% with you. 100 real ass 100 million%, okay? I gotta say, I feel like there's a decent possibility that a lot of the like young people discovering their identity who are getting offended that the world isn't respecting their neopronouns might be happier right now if they'd never heard about neopronouns. You know what I mean? Like, there wouldn't be some burning desire in them to be called some other neopronoun. It might be like they learned it and then they wanted it, and now they're being told that it's as bad as transphobia to not be addressed in that way, and now they're hurt.
So this is the point when things are going to start getting really weird. So you'll notice right here, Jess of TGT, this is really incorrect. To me, this argument here, even if we accept the fact that, xenogenders or neopronouns are these artificial constructs, the idea that there is a difference between the offense of your traditionally oriented gender being ignored versus your individually created one being ignored feels like a really weird argument. It feels very off to me, particularly because we can basically take all xenogenders and all of the genders, quote unquote genders we're talking about from the Mogai stuff as being Tiamat, I was explaining what he was saying. Please, love of God. So what my problem is with this is that, again, it doubles down on the notion that these are 14-year-olds. I'm 40. Full stop. My partner is 28. The idea that this is just Tumblr is not accurate by any stretch. And so the idea here is, this is, I think, the point when things start to go downhill.
Yeah, I mean, so that argument as presented so far doesn't seem to leave much room for non-binary, right? That weird dysphoria sense, I don't really feel comfortable in the feminine fully, right? I never really did, but then, okay, why am I not all the way on the other side of the masculine? Okay, well, I'm not really super comfy over there. So where does that leave me, right? And no, I do feel very much in the center. And thus far, I just don't feel like the arguments really leave room for that experience. And I certainly don't think I'm alone in that, non-binary experience of not really fitting fully either way.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, this is... Wow, thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Jason Nebular. I keep spelling that wrong because it's all one word.
Leslie Fienberg used Zim pronouns in the 80s.
Yep.
Trust me, I like the Elver Sim pronouns and a few variations on those, and they were introduced early 1900s, I think.
Yep. Yeah, there it is. There's the super chat. Thank you so much. So here's the thing. Like, I'm going to let Vosh continue. I'm not trying to hate on anybody. This isn't like a calling out, so please keep that in mind as you're watching this. This is going to be a discourse episode because I do think this matters. But there's a lot of work going on here as far as like making people who have these identities appear as comical or absurd or really young. And while I can understand that some of these genders that have been constructed probably aren't really necessary and may in some ways fade off into the ether because they only describe a very limited experience, yes, it is very infantilizing. That's, I think, my concern.
You know? Can people here at least acknowledge there's a possibility that's happening to an extent? People who say, I don't agree, you think that's not happening at all, I think that's like a delusional perspective. Maybe you don't think it's a big deal, and that's fine. It's totally fine.
So this is where I think Vosh started getting upset. This is my projection. I'm not saying I know this. I'm not in his fucking head. But I posted, this is really incorrect. And we have a number of people, I don't agree. We have a number of people saying, yeah. And the thing is then Vosh takes it to the ad absurd. It takes him to the black and white thinking, right? So now it's, if you don't think this is happening at all, you're delusional. To which my response would be is, no, I can make the argument that this could be happening on some level, but in order for gender to be, in order for trans people to be understood and respected, whether they are binary or non-binary, the simple fact of the matter is we have to assume the identity they're giving us is good faith until proven otherwise. This is why the attack helicopter thing doesn't work. Because if someone calls themselves an attack helicopter, they don't live as that gender. They're being an asshole. Yeah, Jason here, you know exactly what's about to come on, and I'm gonna be the target.
Fine to believe that, but to say it's not happening at all,
but I never said that.
There's no way for people to invent offense as long as the thing they're inventing is a new gender, I don't agree with that.
So I said, from a therapeutic perspective, that seems really off.
I think that's silly, you know? I disagree. I think it gives them an outlet for gender expression they wouldn't have had before. Okay, first of all, you can express your gender in any way, regardless of what gender you are. That's kind of the point, right? Like, even if you're a cis guy, you should be able to express yourself however you want. That's kind of...
So, me saying right here, it is possible, but I don't think it matters. Like, I was acknowledging his weird ass, like, this thing kind of happened thing, but also, like, I come here and said true to this person who he's just responding to.
Kind of what I'm aiming for here. But additionally, like, all right, we're busting out the gamer argument. Guys, how would you feel if people had a whole set of gamer self, gamer ID shit that they expected you to respect, and if you didn't, they essentially called you like transphobes, and they hit you with all the backlash and severity that transphobia warrants? You know what I mean? Is gaming not a large part of people's identities? They're not even the same thing? Really? Why not?
So this is where Vosh starts going into this really strange bad faith argument about how you could then consider anything a gender. And he goes on this for a while. But this is what's really weird to me is, like, I find a lot of his arguments really solid and really good. This one just feels really fucked.
Yeah.
And it sucks too because I actively have defended this person. This really bothers me. And so let's keep going because it's gonna keep getting worse.
Can you just label a thing gender and then it's
No.
okay, they're gamer gender? I don't know why labeling a thing a gender instantly means that it's a different type of identity that instantly gets more respect than any other type of identity. Okay, they're gamer gender. Where is this happening outside of TikTok? I'll ban you if you keep making arguments like that. I literally said this. I literally said, right now we're talking about, like, an incredibly...
Jessica Metal, who follows me on Twitter, Vosh, I get where you're coming from, and I think, sure, there are some people being cringe about it, but overall, I think there's a level of good faith with neopronouns we can approach. True.
Like, esoteric future, like, maybe thing. We're exploring the idea. I'm not saying this is destroying our society right now. Yeah, but the problem is you could apply that logic to, like, being gay. No, you couldn't. You don't invent being gay when you turn 25 and learn about the term on the internet. Being gay is a sincere reflection of an existing tendency, okay?
Yes, an internal experience of who you're attracted to, which is why it makes sense for gender, because my internal experience of gender, at least 20% of it, doesn't make sense in the binary or bimodal system you're describing. Like, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but that's super frustrating.
No, no, I have a hard time tracking multiple things, and I'm also reading chat as we go along.
Yeah, just let me know if you need me to pause for responding to something.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, let's keep going.
There are not like 87 hidden genders within the human that are like yearning for expression.
No, there's one internal experience of gender that seems to come from multiple levels of experience and internal reflection, and using the best words, metaphors, or narratives to express that. This is the problem.
I think explaining this is going to be like a 2-hour conversation. It's unironically transphobic to say those things the same. What 2 things? Anarcho-soy? I've got you tagged in chat. I only see your messages now. What 2 things? Being gay and... Oh, wait, you weren't disagreeing with me. All right. Never mind. We were about to be real mean. No, okay, yeah. I feel like the gender language is becoming dogmatic on the left in a way that becomes politically indefensible. There are people in chat right now who didn't get the gamer thing. You realize that a gender...
No, I get the gamer thing. I just think you're wrong. Yeah, no, Vosh got defensive and is unwilling to listen to anyone else. This is just being triggered. We've talked about this with Riley Grace Rashong. We've talked about this with numerous folks. When people get emotionally attached and triggered, they double down on this. Vosh was literally really ready to yell at this person, and he was wrong about them. Now, we'll keep going, but like, notice this. This is really problematic. And the thing is, and again, I'm willing to defend edginess. I'm willing to defend all sorts of things because, again, I think there's an overall good here. But this really sucked to watch. And it really sucked to have this stuff happen.
Is just an arbitrary set of characteristics surrounding a collective identity, right? You could make anything a gender. You could do it to anything if you wanted to. There's nothing inherently more...
So here's me saying, I get it, just so everyone can see it right here. I get it. I understand your method. I just don't agree.
If you go by Z-Zim or your Xenogender, how is Xenogender any different from being gamer gender?
I just don't think this is valid, is what I say.
I'm seriously asking. This isn't meant to impugn them. I just think that we throw gender next to identities as if that makes them categorically different from other types.
And here's where I argue, no one has gamer dysphoria. So either we assume that gamer could be a gender, which is really fucking weird, or we could assume that gamer is a really important part of your identity, in which case, here's where I would say this isn't the case. There doesn't appear to be gamer dysphoria in existence, and gamers don't, in any way, shape, or form, experience marginalization beyond the jokes we have and the pretend abuse they've supposedly gotten from Anita Sarkeesian. By the way, YouTube chat, we've got a person in there who is really on the line. Please keep an eye on them.
Types of broader identities. It's fundamentally the same. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that.
No, it isn't.
Now, the thing is, don't you think we might be establishing a precedent where saying a thing as a gender affords it more respect than it would otherwise get? Because there are a ton of personality types and archetypes and like identities that we don't call genders that don't get that kind of respect. You know what I mean? Should we just call everything a gender and surrender it all to the dogma?
No, no one's asked for that. We're simply using metaphor and narrative to explore this. Like,
also, if you get to know me and you're like, hey, I want to know you as a girl and only as a girl, you missed the point, right? Like, if you skip getting to know those other, like, non-binary parts of me, you missed it.
This is the same shit that RGR went off on when she unironically attacked a non-binary person who used its pronouns as a proxy to attack Demon Mama. Like, this is the same feel. It's the same... Yeah, he should fucking know better. But again, it keeps fucking going.
No, this is really hard to listen
We call
to.
stuff gender, and it deserves so much respect that we will literally call people bigots if they don't adhere to it. But then with other elements of people's identities, we don't do that. We don't do it with alpha male. We don't do it with sigma male. And go to, by the way, the YouTube comment section under any sigma male video, and I promise you, there are people as attached to being sigma males as there are people attached to being women. Or what about the horoscopes? What about being a
I continue to think that Shoe on Head is just a fucking problem. I'm gonna be really honest. I try to tolerate her stuff because I know she's trying to be lulzy and stuff. But again, we already have a flag for this. It's called non-binary. It covers everyone. Shut the fuck up. Jesus Christ.
Taurus, or a Cancer, or a Sagittarius? What if people start saying stuff like that and ask for different pronouns based on their astrological signs? That, not only could you call that a gender,
you saying fuck?
You could then throw that back and say, this actually has more legitimate basis than any modern binary gender. The astrological signs, those are given to us from antiquity. That shit descends
Yeah, they're made up shit around shapes. What are you doing right now?
from the origins of humanity. So do we want to call those genders? Or to put it another way, do you guys want to live in a world where every zodiac spewing astrology horoscope following dipshit calls you a transphobe for not respecting everything they say?
So Thana here says, I think it's because many NBs use neopronouns because it better matches their gender better, comfy.
About their zodiac sign? I don't want to live in that world. I think it's okay to have elements of your identity that aren't assigned the same massive, grandiose social importance as, like, your gender in modern society. I'm a gender abolitionist, so I want gender to stop having that importance. So when people are like, yeah, we're challenging gender by making new genders and then treating them with the same importance as the genders we already had, wait, how is this eliminating gender? We're just making more of them. We're making more of them and making it...
And here's my argument to this. So Vosh's notion is so he wants to get rid of gender. He doesn't want to build more of it. To which my statement is, the actual notion of gender abolition sounds like a real hard thing. Your utopian pipe dream is valid. So why don't we actually instead just simply go through and deconstruct gender by pointing out its arbitrary absurdity and instead having it be an internal reflection of the person's experience of their gender. Rosanna, you're probably not going to like my answer on that one either, to be clear. But again, I think you collapse gender by overwhelming it with absurdity and play, not by just trying to wish it away. I think that this is really fucking hard. This is really fucking hard.
No, I'm with Jess on this one.
You have anything else you want to add?
No, we're on the same page. Yeah.
You just look really miffed.
Well, it's hard to track all of this because we're going on so many different random tangents, and like my fundamental internal like understanding of my gender, like no, like it's just as absurd for me to base like woman off of the activities that I like. Okay, all right, we did that. It wasn't great. People were not happy with being called, tomboys and sissies just because like they liked certain activities and interests, and that's a lot of what gender got based around.
Well, and Lucy brings up a good point in Discord chat, which is Vosh being cis does create a problem because it does mean that while Vosh can be a very good advocate for the data around trans people's validity and existence, and he's argued against people numerous times on our behalf, which I appreciate. But this is really fucked because in some ways The problem is that you get it if you get it, kind of one of those things. Like, the major problem here is that by definition, if you resonate with your assigned gender at birth, you by definition aren't going to understand the actual gripping and exploring and the experience of dealing with gender ambiguity or gender ambivalence or gender dysphoria. You're not going to get that stuff. Hell, people who have it don't get that stuff. It takes us years sometimes to figure this shit out.
God, I mean, we're still reading, books and exploring the language in order to, better understand this stuff too. That's why we're reading Whipping Girl right now by Julia Serrano.
Yeah.
More complicated and having people spend more time thinking about it. I don't know if that's... I noticed that the people who disagree with me on this are basically just saying that what I say sounds reactionary. Nothing... I know that, thinking is difficult, but nothing that I'm saying right now is a reactionary argument. Because I'm not making any prescriptive statements. Everything that I've said is descriptive. It is a fact that a lot of what people call genders are just identities that could not go by gender. They chose to call it a gender because that assigns it more social worth in online left-leaning spaces. These aren't...
And I would say this is the fallacy of telepathy? I don't fucking know. But this is assuming mind reading. You're assuming you know their intention, when in reality, it could very well be that they used that thing as a description. Simple as that.
Also, I don't know that many left-leaning spaces where, my non-binary pronouns gets me anywhere. In fact, it's much, much harder. I've been in liberal spaces especially too, that don't get it. It is not an easy thing to find spaces that are okay and affirming about this stuff.
How many gender nonconforming people had to dig through this and experience and explore it and had to figure out how to use this language? That's my problem is that it assumes that they're doing this for clout. But the reality is this isn't a clout-based argument. This is an argument based on... I don't even know what to call this. This is just based on assuming the most negative thing possible, that people just want attention. Which, again, I've said before, on the one hand, the data just doesn't back, and two, even if they do it partially for attention, that doesn't invalidate their experience.
Don't we all want, people to notice the parts of us that we like?
This idea that we're sort of in bad faith assigning this level of importance so no one can hurt our poor little egos. Maybe I'm willing to give it. Maybe there are cases of this. That could be true in the whole Mogai experiment. But the fact is that this gets so fucking hard to listen to. Let's keep going. Yeah, I got a lot of negative clout for being trans. And being a non-binary trans woman, I've gotten lots of pushback for this. Holy shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, in left-leaning spaces even, I'm lucky if I still get fucking listened to.
Super
Hell,
true.
You'll see a person in this chat, if we go far enough, who basically calls me out for quote-unquote calling idpol when I specifically point out a pattern of their behavior. No, being trans doesn't get you shit in spaces that are left.
Aren't prescriptive statements. This is true.
That doesn't invalidate.
And there are other things that are identities that we don't assign that level of importance. Now, personally...
Spyro Gallosaurus here, you're reacting to a tiny minority to make a slippery slope argument is directly reactionary? True.
I think the reason why transphobia is such a big deal is because there are so many expectations around what it means to be a man and a woman, and because those clash so hard against people's internal identities sometimes, whether that be physiologically, in which case they're transsexual and they want the medical treatment.
We don't use transsexual anymore, just saying.
Or whether it's only psychological and social, in which case it's still a huge deal because there's a lot of weight to this. Guys, how much social weight is there to any of the innumerable genders you can find?
Yeah, to me, this just brought up a thing of well, first off, it's using a term out of context. It's also bringing up the issue of, inventing offense sounds like playing victim. And the simple fact is again, so, again, if you want to identify as a transsexual, be my guest. I don't, for Many reasons. Lei Ving in YouTube chat, we're not calling names. We are in good faith of this. Please be nice. Thank you.
Yeah, you can use transsexual. It's not that big of a deal to me.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. It's just, for me, the problem is that
that's not really the medical...
Everybody is transgender.
It's not really the medical term that's currently in use is all. That's just not the current jargon is all I mean. But using it, some people still have reasons. Julia Serrano wrote most of her book using it, okay?
Yeah.
You know, she had her reasons, and none of that's that big of a deal to me. So...
No, I kind of agree with the post I just saw. I can't look at it right this second. Oh, Vo Gerbitz said, not to sound too id-pulley, but it does always sound like we're the ones trying to get clout and leftist spaces. Yeah, and again, to me, either gender ambivalence or gender dysphoria are by their nature psychological aspects to which you feel some discontinuity with the way your body is. So this whole separation he's doing, I don't think is real, because it's all just transition. This is why I say that non-binary people are transgender. As much as that gets me in trouble, they are. They just don't always physically transition, but neither do binary trans people always. Sometimes you just socially transition. Yeah, where can I buy a cloud? I have none of it, right? Where is this? Like, anyway, let's keep going.
And on Gender Wiki, I'm going to go somewhere between 0 and none. So we're not talking about things that have this massive social, like huge presence behind them. We're creating new identities. And you can cancel me for this if you want, but a lot of people who choose xenogenders and xenopronouns just choose it because they like how they sound. Not because there's some massive, like, set of expected values surrounding them, but because they sound cool. And again, fucking based. I don't have anything against that. Change your name, change your identity. I don't care. But that's nicknames. We're talking about nicknames. Nicknames we're assigning the weight of gender to. And I just feel a little bit off about extrapolating the immediate and non-personally constructed weight of trans issues and equivocating that with people literally making a gender by creating a new one, by typing it and putting it in Gender Wiki, and then saying they're that, and then saying people are transphobes for not respecting it. That feels odd to me. And it feels like if somebody wanted to be a shit, they could do that with any identity they have. I'm not an alpha male, I'm alpha gendered. If you disrespect me on that, you're being a transphobe. And imagine...
That's legit, but not what transphobes think. Again, like, why are we playing off to cis people? Like, this is the weirdest thing. So yes, someone in bad faith could theoretically just make something up out of random. But again, who does that? Yes, there are people that make some of these up as a way to explore things. Do they stick with them? Maybe, maybe not. But if they just say, I'm this, which is this is a type of non-binary, why is this an issue?
Well, and my face kind of switched over here because I remember he made an argument during the actual debate about neopronouns, being an extension like a nickname would, right? We have lots of nicknames we can identify different ways, and during the debate it sounded pretty solid. With all this extra info, no.
I actually like what was said during the debate, which was that, like, there was a thing of, like, you sort of have like two layers. You have your in-group layer and you have your out-group layer. I actually really like this system. Yeah. Expecting cis people to know neopronouns or xenopronouns or whatever is a hard one because there's a lot of fucking learning up front, and let's be clear, not always going to be good at it.
They're not always there, yeah.
So I always like the idea that if you're non-binary, they, them is a really good default for folks like that, and then in group in queer settings, you can use ZZim or, Fayfair or whatever. I don't disagree with that idea. I think that makes a lot of sense. But again, this feels so invalidating to people who use these, and it feels so in contest with the way that he has behaved in the past or what he'll say during this, and we haven't even gotten to the funnest part.
And by the way, call me a fucking prophet, because will this not happen in the next 12 months? Will it not? Somebody's going to be like, oh, you make fun of alpha males? I'm alpha gender. What, do you have a problem with that? I identify as an alpha, a person who has a set of characteristics like being, aggressive and domineering. What are you going to say to that? Do you have a serious counter argument? A slippery slope? That's not a slippery slope. Slippery slopes mean that you're extrapolating worse conclusions. You're going down the line. This isn't a slippery slope. It's the same thing as what is currently happening. It's not a slope. It's a plateau and we're on it. We're not dropping any elevation. It's the same thing. You take an idea that you like and you make it a gender. Yeah, this is a pull psyop waiting to happen. I think the difference there is that person would clearly be being insincere. Wait, what difference does that make? Since when have leftists cared about the perceived sincerity with which people identify as a gender? Do you do that with trans women? Do you go, oh, I think it's a phase for them? No, you don't. You're operating off intuition for now. You just think the alpha gender thing feels silly, but in reality, your ideology has holes all over it. Not every identity has to be a gender.
And so I will come down to this. So Vosh has a very strong, how do I put this? Vosh seems to have a very strong attachment to things being logically consistent. He seems to take this on from his own personality and also maybe as a disciple of Destiny at one point. Here's my problem. Gender is not logical.
Yep.
None of this is logical. I'm sorry you were dropped into a reality with no meaning. I'm sorry that the universe seems to be just sort of here. We use logic to come to conclusions, but gender doesn't seem to fit in anyone. Even ContraPoints came to this conclusion. ContraPoints literally said in canceling that I don't think this thing anymore that was in this tweet. I don't think there's a rational answer. I don't think there's a better answer, and I identify as this because I do. Because she came to this conclusion, and no offense, I trust Contra on this a lot fucking more. Like, I know he's struggling with this, but in the words of one of the greatest philosophers, that seems so fucking hard for you. Oh my god. This is my problem, he's like, oh, it's not a slippery slope, but it would be. Because the problem is you're assuming that it's going to lead to more and more negative conclusions because people are asking this when we're talking about a very small percentage of a percentage. Some of these folks are friends. Even Lumi during this fucking panel said, and I repeat, I would use fair pronouns as they fit me the best. I don't want to misquote them, excuse me. My brains all over the fucking place. I don't want to misquote them, but that's a thing. Lumi, I do apologize, my brain slipped. Let's go on, because this is just going to keep going. Do you have anything you want to add?
Oh, just... The thing is that the actions that people take are the things that you call out, right? Like, okay, you deal with somebody, let's say somebody did show up in bad faith, like super straight. You call out those actions. Same thing, if somebody was being a jerkhead, based, and trying to claim it as a gender, you go, your actions are having this effect, and you call out those actions, that behavior that they are doing. Like, that doesn't go away, that doesn't change.
But here's the thing is, additionally, like, this whole thing of, like, someone, whether they're sincere or not, though that absolutely is what matters. If someone lives as their gender, they exist in it, they experience social interactions based on it, as a non-binary or binary trans person, that's their gender. The only way we can prove that someone isn't what they say they are is by somehow showing them to be bad faith, and somehow showing that they are not in some way this, and that's a really dangerous thing. You have to be very, very clear about what you're looking for. I would never call a single trans woman on the internet pretending or faking or anything like that, because that gets really fucking dangerous. As much as I dislike Blair White, she is a woman, even if she doesn't think she fully is. This is really fucking weird. Let's just keep going. We haven't gotten to the part that's my favorite.
Wasn't super straight that? I don't share your perception. I think that the validity of identities should be weighed on a utilitarian basis, and super straight is transphobic. That's my argument against it. But if you want to...
But here, this is the thing. It's not wrong because it doesn't meet some utilitarian math. Super straight is wrong because it's built on an inherent premises of It's built inherently on a premise that is basically fucking transphobic. The kid says literally in the TikTok, "That's not a woman to me." Direct quote.
Yup. All right, let's try and
Adopt
get
a
through some of this.
holistic,
Yeah, I know
all
we're running through
identities are
time.
valid
Yeah.
perspective.
We'll
I'm
get through
sorry,
everything
guys.
going.
Super straight is valid. That's as valid of a sexuality as being homosexual or pansexual. If that's the perspective you're taking, then you have to accept that. It is a logic. It is a logically. It's deductively a product of the premises that have been laid out. No, I do not. Yes, you do. I'm sorry. I see you, by the way, in chat, Jesse of TGT. I know you're mad about this, but I'm afraid so. Yeah.
Wiping my head. Yeah, this is where things kind of get fun. Jesse. Me going, wait, my name is Jesse? Jesse?
There's only like one babu that's been given permission
Why
to
should we not
call
evaluate
Jesse.
genders on a case-by-case
Call her
utilitarian
Jesse,
basis?
so-
Because if we did that, we would cut out all of these genders on GenderWiki. That's why. Because there.
Oh, and here's the fun person who kept eye-stalking me and talking shit. That's
Also-
a fun one.
I know Gender Wiki can be daunting, but just because it's on Gender Wiki does not mean that this is a wide, large-scale thing. It just means that at some
It
point...
just means someone wrote a fucking
At
page.
some point there was a need and somebody wrote a page for it, and you know what? It's there.
And how many people actually frequent that or go back to it or actually identify? Like, this just feels so
And-
fucking overblown.
Yeah.
Yeah, Intrepid Elm, I think this is a way overblown argument. Call people whatever they want and move on.
There's no utility in constructing a gender when what you really mean is a title. What is
Koopa Shell, Jess is mad. Jesse.
what does star gender mean? It doesn't mean anything. It's a title. It's a word and nothing else. What does a woman or a man mean? Well, you can tie that back to a huge range of social expectations. There's some utility in having terms to describe them, even if you want to
And
pull
then
it
you can
apart.
break all of
it doesn't
those.
matter. Then if it doesn't matter, then you're not making utilitarian argument, in which case, congratulations. Welcome, super straights. You can't... You have to understand, it's not a stun lock.
Here's what I said, but we are not constructing a gender. We are using them as a way to describe and point at them.
This is a logical contradiction in the behavior of the online left. There are two distinct and incompatible positions you have to adopt here. Either you use a sort of utilitarian judgment to determine whether or not an identity should be called.
By the way, JKRSSLR, I really hope that's a joke. I assume that is. Like, nobody expects anyone to fucking get this stuff off the bat. Most trans people I know are very, very okay about, like, teaching people shit.
A gender, in which case you can reject super straights and alpha genders or sigma genders, or you just accept everyone, in which case you have to accept them as well. Any arguments that you would make against them could be used against the myriad genders that neopronoun types adopt.
Me seeing, man, I got called out, lol.
Is this different from the attack helicopter meme? I'm a bit confused. Unfortunately, the attack helicopter meme is trending towards reality right now. I'd hope this wouldn't happen, but yeah, there are people on the left who are unironically arguing that identity should supersede categorical definitions. I know they're a severe minority, but God help me. God help me if I ever have to defend this in front of an audience. It's not a big deal, though. Logical contradictions in an ideology are a big deal. They're a huge deal. My job is to defend these ideas to audiences of millions. It is not acceptable to me to just shrug and say, oh, there's an inconsistency in this ideology, but whatever, it's not harming anyone at the moment.
This is very similar to the RGR versus... like, the RGR versus DM and Mama argument. What is a woman? Anyone who identifies as a woman. Well, that doesn't meet my logical progression of how identities work, so as such, you're not agreeing with me. Like, this... again, it feels like being bullied into a so-called logical perspective. Just because I follow you on your premises doesn't actually mean I have to agree with you. Am I sure he saw my argument? I don't even know what he saw. He called me Jesse.
Moment. small problems now in the future can cause larger problems. It's important to be able to understand these things. Are you anti-intellectuals? Are you sincerely satisfied with, oh, well, it doesn't make sense, but whatever, it's not hurting anyone? Is that seriously the limit of your imagination? Can you not fathom a future where something like this becomes an issue? Damn slippery sloping it. This isn't a slippery slope. A slippery slope is when you unjustifiably say that a set of positions will degrade into other related but worse positions. I'm saying the existing position right now, the current thing, not a slope, the thing we're on, is presently logically untenable. Yeah, a lot of people in chat, you aren't even fucking listening to me. You're just mad. You think that I'm rejecting...
Jess of TGT, I think my problem here is that you are thinking that we are making shit up when we are using pronouns and names to describe an internal sense of experience.
The basis of self-identity, which is the opposite of what I'm doing. I'm accepting self-identity and saying we should have a way of logically differentiating...
You saying people aren't listening? I am listening.
...between what we designate as genders and what we don't. If you want to think everything is a gender, then fine. We have sailor genders who like sailing, and gamer genders who like gaming. And by the way, being gamer gender has a hell of a lot more social connotation behind it than being astro gender ever has, okay? I can promise you that. Being a gamer is way more of a gender than astro whatever, okay? We have those genders, and we can have carpenter genders, and we can have this, and we can have that, and we can have et cetera, et cetera. And if you want that, then congratulations. Now every identity has to be respected or you're transphobic.
Do utilitarian math after accepting the gender. I agree, Spyrogal. I agree a lot. I am not a fucking gamer gender. I am an NB trans woman, and I still use she, her, and fey, fair. Like, I'm literally just pissed off.
You realize that, right? If you acknowledge that people can ascribe the mantra of a gender to an identity, then denying people the sincerity of that becomes transphobia, right? Perhaps I should find individual people and ask them their opinions on this. Hold on.
No one accepts that level of absurdity.
Who stands? Who yet stands?
So this is the hammering down with a hammer, because if anyone's standing up as a nail. I stand.
Can't trust any of you. All the people who disagree with me don't actually want to get picked on. And I can't actually...
Here's me playing coggers and going...
Hell if you're... No. Stop.
People saying crush them, that's healthy and useful.
Let's just follow this point by point, right? So let's start somewhere where we all agree, okay? Let's start somewhere we all agree, okay? It's transphobic to say that a trans woman is a man. Can we start there? It's a left-leaning channel.
Now, I will admit, this point I was getting pissed. Pick on me.
Oh, I'd like to believe we could at least... This is the most sure-footed position from which a person can stand. Okay, right. Okay. Now, do you believe that it's now let's extend this beyond the binary. Is it transphobic to say that a non-binary AFAB person is a woman? Right? To me, yes. This is an easy yes. This isn't a step forward. It's the same step. You're still on the exact same step. You've just moved the other foot up onto that step. It's the same step. Okay. So with all that being said, now, I'm not going to ask you this. I'm only going to say, do you acknowledge, we acknowledge that this is a thing that's happening. People are creating new gender identities. Not just
still with
vague,
you.
Non-binary
So
ones,
I'm already behind because of the lag.
Non-binary ones. Specific ones which exist outside the gender binary. Okay? Right. So these are gender identities. So logically, if these are gender identities, then disrespecting them and those identities is akin to disrespecting more standard, ambiguous non-binary identities, right? Like if a person goes by non-binary and you're like, oh, you're a woman, how is that any different from a person being non-binary star gender and you're like, oh, you're a woman? Well, in both cases, it's transphobia, right? I would always, at the very least, you should always call a person who has neopronouns they, them. I mean, at the very least, baseline. I mean, you know, so that's transphobia. Right, okay. Now, we acknowledge that the criteria for the creation of new genders is not exactly stringent, correct? There isn't exactly an academic body to go through. There are people out there identifying with genders that they literally make themselves by pulling together affixes and suffixes and literally like they make it sound cool and then they go with that. So this is to create a new gender is as to create a new flag. You know, you can do it in paint. So with that being said, what is to stop every element of human identity to be turned into a gender? Or, I'm sorry, we should phrase this yes, no. Don't you agree that logic, those premises, then means you could turn any element of human identity into a gender?
And I said no, but we have to accept them as good faith, otherwise it leads to invalidating other reported internal experiences.
Right? Like anything.
And then I said no.
So to me, this is yes. If you can literally just make a gender, like make a name, and then it's a gender, with nothing else, you don't need like a historical parallel or like a cultural context. You don't need like a set of expectations associated with them necessarily. To me, non-binary means that you deviate from the binaries. But the thing is, most human categories exist on a bimodal spectrum at which masculine and feminine are at opposite ends. So think of everything a human can be, every adjective that applies to human character. Most of them are charted in some way to be masculine or feminine, right? Think about it. I mean, we have strength and height are considered masculine, whereas weakness and being short are generally considered more feminine. Whether we're talking about daintiness and manners, whether we're talking about affect, confidence, boisterousness, most human behaviors are gendered in some way. Non-binary people all possess these traits in varying extents. Some non.
So it seems like a lot of people in chat are saying they're kind of feeling done with this and feeling overwhelmed. Okay, I don't want to punish you guys or anything. What I will say is this. Right there I said, but we aren't talking about star gender, we were talking about pronouns originally. Many people use neopronouns and identify as NB. This is where this gets really fucked. And because I want to be expedient on time, I'm going to end this here. Here's what I'm going to say. This is at right around 3:27. I do not want to be accused of clipping and shipping. If you want to watch the rest of this, be my guest, but it is hard for me as well because there is at least one or two other times where I believe Vosh calls me out. There's a lag issue, I believe, where he thinks I'm responding to the thing he's saying at that moment, not the thing I was responding to previously. And then I start getting harassed by one of the individuals in here who's regularly just poking at me and being an irritant. Shortly after that, I left. If you want to go through the stream, tell me I'm wrong, tell me I'm whatever, that's fine. I don't have time to go through this because we only have X amount of time to stream and we have a bunch of more segments to do. But I need you guys to understand this, is that this really bothered me. This sucks a lot because I really appreciate someone like Vosh going through and making arguments on the behalf of trans people. I like that. But this was really disappointing and really hurt.
There was a request to take, if we can share the link with the timestamp in our links of stream. Just check the start at button. Yeah.
So I'm going to put this in our Discord. And so the thing is, if you would like to watch it and finish the segment, that's cool. I just want to get to the point because I'll be honest, this is getting hard for me to watch too.
No, this is really rough. I got a few thoughts that I can kind of sum up, I think.
Yeah, why don't you summarize your stuff?
So I think I've got a bunch of different values in different places on this. I know that a lot of people have a tendency to go, hey, I'm experiencing this thing. Is there a word for it? Is there? Like, they really want a word because it can help you feel validated. It can help you feel understood or give you language for what you're experiencing. And sometimes there is a word for it. Okay? Sometimes there isn't, and you're left with a descriptor that is better. And that happens. And I noticed, especially with, like, Mogai, a lot of that stuff came on around, to my understanding at least, I'm not, like, an expert here, but with Tumblr and people exploring and people trying to find, and young people especially trying to find words for what they were experiencing. Okay? And to me, I just don't find that to be that big of a deal. Like, young people especially go through that, so do adults. And we have just as many people posting, hey, is there a word for this experience in our thing? And it's not like, as a culture, we taught people what dysphoria was, okay? Like, that didn't happen. So I guess I don't have an issue with people exploring. And if you want a politically, defensible position, it's probably just gonna be live and let live. Like, let them explore themselves, let them experience themselves, let them express themselves. That's it, right? There's no harm with that. In fact, you're probably doing more harm by going, no, you don't get to express yourself this way. You don't get to do it. All right? And guys, I gotta be real here. I know I say I'm a trans masc NB, but the thing I keep coming back to over the years is that my gender is colorful. That's the best descriptor that I have. Okay, and I've been deep diving on this for years. Like, I feel dysphoric when my hair isn't dyed bright colors. I don't know why that is. It's really wild, but I've always expressed myself in loud and loud colors.
Okay. So real quick, Rosanna wanted, Finley Baker pledged by Patreon. Thank you so much. So let's try to break this down. So Rosanna asked, can you explain Xenogenders, what Vosh is arguing, and what is going on in a way you would explain it to a senile bunny? Sure, and I can sum up my thoughts on it too. Xenogenders, to my understanding, are individuals whose gender does not conform to a normal human-oriented thing. The term Xeno seems to be a bit of a misnomer. While it can be something of a more alien persuasion, it generally refers to anything that's not human. This can be like bunny gender, so they might use pronouns such as bun, bun self. To be honest, this is very rare. The number of people who do this is probably a percentage of a percentage of a percentage. This is not going to be part of the larger academic discourse. This is the slippery slope argument we were arguing against Vosh with. Xenogenders are individuals whose gender seems to not fall into the realm of that bimodal spectrum of masculine and feminine. Fair enough. What Vosh is arguing is, from a utilitarian perspective, having every identity as a human be conflated with gender invalidates gender in a way that could be harmful to trans people, and by definition is going to lead to some negative outcome, though that's never really stated. Right? And so he is arguing that there is this idea that you can't make everything you identify with as something you identify as. This is the discussion we've had before about many other types of people. That is, there seems to be a conflation by some folks between I identify as versus I identify with. And the problem is that while yes, it is entirely feasible and even likely that some people have chosen to do that, I A, don't know if that's a problem, B, this fear of being called out for transphobia because you don't respect their stuff, again, as long as you are acknowledging they're non-binary and using the pronouns they ask for, there's a non-issue here. Just full stop, there's a non-issue. The problem is this has a lot of fears about what's going to happen and not a lot of idea what that is beyond it's going to be hard to argue to conservative, which is grow up. It's going to be hard to defend. Then get better arguments. I found this entire part of the stream really dampening and really invalidating. Not because I'm manufacturing offense, but because I expected better. I know neopronouns are something that Vosh has had issues with in the past. I know Demon Mama wanted to call him out on it. But I think that this really needs work, Vosh. And I'm sorry if I didn't explain things well in your chat, and I'm sorry if I don't go through the rest of the section I was in. I have other segments to do, and my chat seems to be really bothered by this. At least number of people who I trust and care about. I recommend to everybody to go check out the rest of that stream, watch that whole section, and I am still going to be a fan of Vosh. I'm still going to like his stuff. I'm still going to critique him when I think he's wrong, just like we did with the Kink and Pride stuff. But this really disheartened me. And it was weird because I know I donated during the stream. It's just $5, right? But and people can correct me if they want, but I didn't hear that actually read. And I don't know if that's if Vosh is actually mad at me because, you know, he's interacted with me vaguely through his chat and online, or if I'm just making that up. Could be parasocial bullshit. I don't know. But yeah, this hurt. Yeah, this hurt. So check out the rest of that stream, and don't necessarily judge Vosh unfairly in all of the things he does.
Yeah.
And again, we want to be nuanced. We want to experience people as all of the things they are, not just the things that are convenient at the time. So this isn't another bag on Vosh video. This isn't the same as Professor Flowers or the Quivering or any of these other idiots. I want to be fair to everybody. So we'll see you in the next video.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. You can also ring the bell if you want to be notified of our videos. If you want to help the channel, you can donate at streamlabs.com/transgirltherapist/tip. You also can become a patron at patreon.com/transgirltherapist. As low as $3, you can support our channel. Thanks for watching.